A win-win partnership or a debt trap?
Debt trap, a term used by many in the West to describe China's loans to Africa, is a misdirection. It's a political cover-up for the most greedy bunch in the world, the vultures in the West. According to the World Bank's International Debt Statistics, in 2022, Africans owed $655.6 billion to external creditors. China's public lending accounted for less than 10% of that. More than 35% of that debt is owed to Western banks, asset managers, and oil traders. And on average, they charge twice as much interest on their loans.
Western countries, they are the ones who made Africa have a dirty trap. Before, Africa, if you wanted capital, you go to Paris, it's expensive. You try to go to New York, it's even more expensive. You try to go to London, oh, it's through the roof.
Both the IMF Managing Director, Kristalina Georgieva, and former World Bank President David Malpass had called on the UK and the US to pass legislation to stop private lenders from blocking debt relief agreements for Africa.
If we didn't have access to these possibilities offered by China, the alternative is worse, not better. So we have to stop this China bashing about that, because it's really not helpful to Africa.
So why is the West accusing China of debt trapping Africa? One word: fear. China and Africa have a very close relationship.
The Chinese government has had a rather active Africa policy dating to the 1950s, and being one of the leaders of the so-called Third World at that time. It's development assistance now, not simply as gifts, but as investments in Africa. In some ways are exporting things that China does better than any place else.
Their cooperation started soon after the establishment of the People's Republic of China and deepened over the decades. Since the establishment of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation in 2000, Chinese investments in Africa have helped build or upgrade more than 10,000 kilometers of railways, nearly 100,000 kilometers of highways, 1,000 bridges, 100 ports, and 66,000 kilometers of power transmission and distribution. More than 4.5 million jobs were created for Africa. The West sees China's long-lasting friendship and increasing investments as China expanding its influence to challenge Western dominance in Africa. But this perception is wrong. Yet they fear that. To the West, the Cold War lives on in Africa. Debt trap is how the West covers up its greed and politicking. It seeks to distract the African countries from projects that can create real progress in Africa and drive a wedge between China and Africa. By trying to undermine China's influence, the West wants to hold on to its dominance in the region without putting in real efforts that benefits Africans. But the Africans aren't indulging them.
Or quand vous voyez la nature de la relation, ça veut dire que les Africains ne croient pas en cela. Puisque, effectivement, quand on regarde de plus près, les prêts chinois, en tout cas, les prêts que le Sénégal a pris en Chine pour construire des infrastructures sont tous à des taux extrêmement faibles. L'exemple de l'autoroute de Thiès-Touba a été construite avec un financement sur 20 ans. Mais au bout de 3 ans et demi, on a fini la construction et l'autoroute a commencé à être exploitée. Donc pendant 2 ans, 3 ans, nous avons reçu des recettes avant même de commencer le remboursement de ce prêt.
China's investments in Africa is not just about financial success. It's about creating real value to help Africa develop.
What I actually like about the Chinese approach oftentimes is that actually it is able to think about the grander scale of things. So we don't simply do small projects we actually try to think of the projects that would actually have a huge advantage in bringing into the sort of market economy production large parts of the world.
Hannah Ryder, the CEO of Development Reimagined, pointed out American organizations have only funded 3 infrastructure projects in 2023. Chinese organizations funded 9. We cannot distinguish China's role from the gap it is filling in a multilateral system that does not meet our needs. And that's good. After being ignored by the West for the past several decades, it's time to help Africa achieve its own growth, instead of being victimized by the ghost of the past. True friendship is built upon mutual benefits, not upon lust for power. Accusing China of creating debt traps can't stop the West's declining influence in Africa. What it can do, and is doing, is making the West the butt of the joke.